Welcome everyone to episode 270 of Just Joshing. I'm your host Joshua Pentolaresco. I write stuff in Podcast 2. Today I conclude my conversation with Jess Alter. Jess and me had a great little chat from levity to science fiction to just the conclusion of our chat. Jess was fun, if nervous. Jess, next time hopefully you're not as nervous, but I had a blast chatting with you and you're welcome back anytime. To the rest of you, in honor of the fact that Indie Imprint is sponsoring me starting next month, I'm also going to be giving away a copy of Jess Alter's book, Man and Brother, which is, if you saw, is the image there. On top of Undine's Tier is going to be the contest this week. This is my last copy of Undine's Tier. It's been a blast working with Talina on it, so Talina, thank you very, very much. I also want to thank my other sponsors, Adam Dries for being amazing for 5 Critical Things, and Jason Lavelle for the Raven podcast. I am hoping, Jason, things are going well with that. Jason's a great podcast, guys. The Raven podcast is definitely worth listening to. I'm still partial to Susie, but that's because, well, I know Susie very well. But there are a lot of great episodes there, and he's done some really cool stuff, so you should definitely check it out. Finally, before we begin, I promised I'd do this last time. I screwed up, so Benoit, I'm sorry. But Benoit Chartier has released a book called Universal Wisdom. It's personal philosophy stuff. I had Benoit on the podcast way back in episode 201. He was a riot. I really enjoy him, and I think you guys will too. So check him out. Check out Universal Wisdom. It's available on Amazon and other book outlets as well. Okay, that's enough plugging. Let's get to our conversation with Jess Alter. The following podcast is sponsored by author-editor Talina Winters. Talina has just released her book, The Undine's Tier, which is book 1 of the Rise of the Grigori trilogy. It is a young adult setting which has a very interesting take on mermaids and mermen, which are called Undines. You can find this book on Amazon, Kobo, and all available book platforms, or you can get more information on TalinaWinters.com or through her social media channels at Talina Winters. And by the Raven Podcast. The Raven Podcast is the brainchild of Jason Lavelle. Each episode, he actually narrates a story from an author, and then him and the author get together and they do an interview about the story. This is a perfect commute podcast on the way to work. They're short and very memorable. I really dig Jason's take on interviews and how he conducts himself in telling stories. He's an awesome narrator. He's a great guy, and this is a great podcast. Check it out at theravenpodcast.com or on any podcast app you are aware of. So I'm going to ask an interesting question.
Yes.
So,
please do.
As far as, we'll get into science fiction in a second, but I want to ask this. Does the story dictate you go more lighthearted, or do you feel like you owe that to your audience? I mean, I'm just asking that first and foremost before I make a comment, because it seems to me like you had an opportunity to pick a direction and you chose the levity. Yeah, the levity.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No. Don't be sorry. This is a conversation. This is a conversation. I'm expecting. I don't expect this to be like. I like it when there's a good back and forth and there's an engagement. So don't worry about that. But what I'm bringing out is, are you? I guess the question I'm asking is, did you go back to levity because you felt that that's what the story needed? Or did you do it because you felt, for lack of a better term, fearful of the other path?
I felt I needed it. Because I felt that I wanted to have put into the world something that was upbeat, uplifting, that made me smile. Because really, at heart, all creators, aren't we trying to create something that we want to see in the world? I mean, that's the whole point of actual creation. You know, with the games that for example, right now, Indie Imprint is working with some developers on not two-potted. Well, it's Get Your A to Mars, GYATM, and it's just a fun, wonderful little game that's getting developed, and I love being part of this. I'm actually going to doing some of the writing with it, going to be doing some of the dialogue for it, and I just love it because it is so fun in its own way, and it's a little bit of homage, science fiction homages everywhere. It's such a fun little game, and I love being part of the creativity. I love being an editor because I get to see others creating, from it's wonderful. I love to be able to see and to offer ideas, and but really honestly seeing these new ideas coming out, people expressing themselves creatively. I definitely love the music that's coming out. I used to write to music, and I really need to start writing to music again. So yeah, no, I think that creation, and I love, do we need the intensity? Yes, we do. Gosh, I'm trying to. For example, I'll listen to a lot of hip hop and stuff. I know you like hip hop, but I listen to hip hop because and punk music, rock music, because it speaks to how I'm feeling, and it tells me I'm not alone.
No,
but
I got
also
you.
I need something more uplifting. I'm sorry.
No. There's nothing for you sorry about. I asked a question, and this is your answer. Don't feel bad about it. Don't. You're very Canadian. You're saying you're. It's like, I'm sorry for having an opinion. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. It's all good. Okay, so I'm of two mindsets. So I'm going to give you my take, because this is the thing about how I look at science fiction. I like The Cloud Diver is a very lighthearted story. The first one. Book 2 is not so lighthearted. Actually, it's actually very hard because. For me, the next novel it's not a trans novel, but there's a lot of trans features. Like, there's a lot of trans issues in the next book. I am woefully ignorant when it comes to this. So I'm putting a lot of research into this. And there's a lot about the next book that is dark. But I think I think of Dr. Seuss. And the reason I bring up Dr. Seuss is he never shied away from dark things. You can bring out dark matter in ways that actually do come out very lighthearted. And you can deal with. It's amazing what you can do to a serious situation if you can laugh at it. If you can find a way to laugh at it, you take away its power over you. I have a day job I call the Sparkle Muffin, and the reason I call it that because I know every time I go in there, it's a hot mess. To put it nicely, it's like a drunken hot mess every time I go into this place. But if I can look at this mess and I can go sparkle, it can't touch me. It doesn't matter what's in front of me. It doesn't matter how big and bad it is. Can you literally take something seriously if you can say sparkle to it? Can it really impact you in a negative way? And I feel like one of the things that we don't do and what we should be doing a lot more of today is it's okay not to talk about darker things, but we should be talking about them with a little levity, with a little dark laughter. Because if we can laugh at it, we can look at it like seriously and not have it have power over us. When we look at the political, and I look at the political situations especially in the United States, but it's not just the United States, it's abroad as well. The reality of the situation is, politically speaking, there is a big divide. And the problem is no one knows how to discuss things. Look, I can disagree with you on issues, and I'm sure there are issues we disagree on very strongly. I'm sure there are things we have common ground on too. So at the end of the day, agree or disagree, I can still have a beer with you. I'm not going to be hateful if for example you like guns. I don't, but I understand, like, especially where you're at, like, it's a big part of the culture down there, right? It's not what people... It is, yes. Right? It's not what people think it is necessarily either, right? But, that all said, I mean, there are things about that culture I have a problem with. And, and I'm just being honest about it. There are things about it I do have a problem with. There are things I don't. There are things like... There are things I don't, though. My dad grew up in Detroit. So I have a very my approach is on guns is not necessarily not a typical one. But that all said, right? There are things we disagree on. There are things we agree on. I still can have a beer with you when it's over. Peace, love. It's we live and let live. I am a big enough person to acknowledge I don't have all the answers. And that's the problem today. That is the real problem today. Is part of it is how social media works. Social media creates an echo chamber. I believe in the power of fluffy cats, and if I say that on my social media, I will have fluffy cats for days on end. No one would, I think, disagree with me, but I mean, it's one of those situations where you gotta look at that and go, I'm kind of making the world the way I want to, not necessarily the way the world is. Yeah. And I think what's happening today more and more is that sense of reality that people have is changing, because it's not the same realities as it was 10 years ago. It's more insidious in some ways as a result of this, and it's frightening. I'm not going to say it's not, because you should be look again. Fluffy kitties, I have an army of fluffy kitties. Fluffy tanks, I'd have an army of fluffy tanks on my algorithms. If I said turbo dice, whatever the hell that is, I'd probably have some weird slinky amalgamation on the dice, and that would be the echo chamber I created for myself. I watch sports debate shows when I'm writing. I listen to them because they're mindless. But the thing is, now I go on my YouTube channel, and that's all I see is sports debate shows. If I want to change it up, If I want to change it up, I have to choose something else. So if I choose, hardcore anime violence, then that'd be it, right? And we create these realities to ourselves all the time. And the biggest thing is, I think what's happened is, much like television back in the day would convince the world somehow that is real and the world outside is the fiction. I feel the internet today has convinced the world that is real, and the world outside is not necessarily as real. It's a weird little thing we do, I think, as a species. But that does explain why I can get into a debate with somebody and realize that I truly think that person may not be able to tell their ass from a hole in the ground, and that also might be though, because my reality is a certain echo, and their reality is another echo, and maybe both of us are deluding ourselves. But who really sits there and thinks about it that way? And that's the problem.
Well, it also doesn't help that we've got algorithms working on, basically everything is an algorithm, so it's building that echo chamber over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when something breaks out of the echo chamber, then the people who are, who weren't, I guess, in on the, party are going, wait, what is going on here? Because there are things that are so alarming to me as an individual, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. I'm like, I would love to be able to sit down and listen and talk to another person about their concerns and their fears, so that I can learn from them and understand and expand my point of view. The difficulty I'm having is that these people are just, throwing down sound bites that are so terrifying and threatening, which is why, for me, I'd like to have something a little bit more a little lighter. But I do agree. You were talking about, wanting to really address important social issues, and I think that is important. And also the power of comedy, the power of laughter, to be able to address things that you normally would get in serious trouble for if you address them seriously. I mean, it's the court jester concept of don't kill the messenger, where you send the jester into the king to explain the terrible things that are happening, just so they won't, because that's the only person in the world who won't get their head chopped off.
Hopefully. Yes. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, but they're more likely. It's dancing and prancing around and jingling the bells and and sire, your wife's a whore.
Watch my all amazing gyrations with bells. But anyways, that's another thing altogether. But that's the thing, right? I think
Yes.
I think the best argument for reading is reading encourages empathy. That is probably the best argument. That's the best argument for reading, and that to me is that's something that isn't thought of I think as much anymore. We live. It's ironic. We live in an age today where it's almost at the very beginning again in some ways. It's like almost we're rediscovering old tools we haven't used in years, right? And that's a really cool thing. On the other hand, the trade-off seems to be is we no longer have the same connections to each other as we once did, and as a result, we've lost wisdom in just dealing with each other, right? And that's why when I go on Twitter, sometimes I'll see a name I'll see a weird name like Tubby Pig 365 going off about trolling somebody about the virtues of, you know, such and such world leader or such and such policy or such and such, like whatever. And that's why I think we've become inept socially at addressing opinions, and I almost feel like that's by design. But again, maybe I'm a touch cynical. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's absolutely okay. I mean, for me, you're dealing with a person right now who basically. I used to actually have to put the wires into my phone, into the phone in my dorm room, connected the wires into a 50s phone to be able to get internet so that I could chat on the IRC all around the world. So that, for me, I was in 1980, Nerfle. I felt kind of weird because everyone else was, but I was, writing. I was writing, communicating that way. And now it seems like, now I feel normal, but also awkward because it's very strange to be in this, this, I guess, renaissance like you were talking about. Unless I've completely gone off the rails.
No. Sure. We have, I think, the potential to be either a renaissance or a dictatorship. And it's really up to us where we want to go. It's. I truly believe that people do exactly what they want to do. Yeah. Right. And yeah. I look at the. I just look at the world what it could be. I literally believe this. Like we are literally a left or a right turn from either the darkest timeline or the brightest timeline. There's no in the middle, right? It's one or the other, and we always have that choice every time. And sometimes we go down the darkest timeline, sometimes we go down the lightest timeline. Like I look at like one of the real problems we're facing today right now is feeding each other. So on the one hand, that's like so darkest timeline, oil is not quite at 1-to-1 barrel yet, but is approaching that. And when it approaches that, we're going to have to really reevaluate how we do things. On the other hand, I'm looking around the world, and I'm seeing people come up with new ways of growing food. I see new ideas of how to restore desertification. I see there's a lot of cool things that are going on right now that gives me optimism. There's pessimism too. There are things that terrify me, right? But
I agree entirely. If I want to be uplifted, I read science news. There's the things that are happening. With the Mars exploration.
Oh yeah,
I'm a big fan of that. I love learning about the cosmos, everything. It's fascinating. The science advances. Oh my gosh, and Teslas. Yes. I love the fact where I am right now, there's a Tesla charger, less than a quarter mile away from me. That's fantastic. Everything that's happening with the commercial rocketry that I was concerned about, it's not happening. But then I'm also kind of ticked off because people are attacking this person who is coming up with these wonderful ideas and executing them, and often giving the rest of the world the 2-fingered or 1-fingered salute, depending on where you're from in the world.
Yep.
And I'm proud of him for doing that, for saying he is an unapologetic creator, and I appreciate that, because what he's putting into the world, I want to see. That's the future. That's the future that I want to see, where things work.
I actually, so for me,
Yeah.
Hold on. Hold on a second here.
You okay?
Yeah, a friend just popped up. Letting a friend know, just letting a friend. It's just one of those things. I don't want necessarily that future. You know the future I want. You know the future I want is I don't want one person leading the charge is cool. I would rather everybody was creating something, working together, kind of having that balance, figuring out that balance between interacting with each other in a way that doesn't necessarily involve violence. If there's a disagreement, there's ways to resolve it. But on the flip side, okay, I might come up with a new flavor of ice cream. Someone down the street might come up with a way to a better kind of toilet paper. Another person down the street might come up with a new way of building a home.
Yeah, and all of that together makes a better future.
Exactly. I would rather everybody can contribute to a better future, or everybody can contribute to a nightmare. I would rather everybody. The problem we have, I think the problem we have today is when we look at our news, when we look at our what's expressed to the public, a lot of times it's negative. We don't. We don't look at the magic that's literally out there all the time, and it's one of those situations. It's one of those situations where we have to, as a culture, I think as a people, we have to make that choice to move away from that. The problem is the biggest problem is right now we're still coming from an age where wealth is essentially controlled from one power source, and we're still dealing with this old thinking of how this is done. And until we walk away from that thinking completely, and we won't do that until things collapse. That's usually just how it works. Right? Until we walk away from that,
that's true.
Right? Until we walk away from that, we won't look at what else we could possibly do. My sincere hope is when we get to that point, it's not too late to change certain things. But it's one of the like I'm cautious. I would say is I'm cautiously optimistic about the future, and I'm optimistic because I can see that there's so much good that could happen. So many possibilities that are just incredible and mind-boggling to talk about. On the flip side, I mean, I worry always about those initial applications. I always keep in mind Einstein's famous, one of my favorite Einstein quotes, I don't know the weapons of World War III, but I do know the weapons of World War IV. And his evidence is sticks and stones. And I'm like, that's a legitimate concern. I can't deny that, right? So, but I am cautiously optimistic that we'll figure it out. Right?
I'd like to see that in my lifetime. I mean, I know it's very frustrating, that we don't even have the enlightened self-interest, and that's my frustration. So, if we're not even going to have the enlightened self-interest, then why don't we all just work together and raise everyone up? Tide raises all boats.
But
we can all
absolutely
lift each other up as a community, help feed each other, do things, and actually it's having that compassion, and it's shocking how many people don't, but it's wonderful when you see how many people do.
I think with the people that don't, the thing you got to realize about a lot of them is they're afraid. They're afraid of what they have, that they might lose it. And what they don't realize is they might have already lost it. And they don't even realize it yet. If you're afraid to lose something, your mind focuses on where, like, if you're afraid of losing something, you're probably going to lose it. It's just how it works. If you're not afraid of losing it, you still might lose it. I mean, there's a price for change. But, I mean, you have two choices. If when change is coming, you can try to cling on to what you have at all cost, which is where I think a lot of these people go, or you can let go and embrace the future. And the problem is, especially, like, how did somebody describe this one I heard? The most of our countries are governed by a senile grandpa who may or may not know their faculties. And it's not just the United States, it's worldwide. There's a lot of grandpas that run things. Problem is, grandpa's, the world has receded grandpa, right? So so grandpa doesn't know what's going on anymore. So grandma may not know what's going on anymore either. So you gotta look at maybe mom and dad at the very very most and go, you know what? Maybe mom and dad should make some decisions about the future, and grandpa can be an advisor, and grandma can be an advisor, and that would be it. And the problem is though, grandpa runs the world.
Yeah.
And since grandpa runs the world, they're gonna go back to what they knew worked for them, even if it doesn't work today.
Well, it's interesting because being as I'm nearly I'm at that age. I'm a woman at a certain age, so I've seen this over and over. I mean, I was a adolescent during the Reagan years, and dang, that was a lot of old people. And then on top of it, we had the Cold War in the 80s. So, I mean, it's one of those things of seeing things from a different angle. And then on top of it, my own parents, they were hippies. So, and no, they're not. They stopped being hippies. But the point is that I think that individuals change, like you said, the what they're afraid of losing. And the problem is that we've had a lot of just people, I guess, afraid of losing to the point that they're not actually noticing who's taking from them. So we're actually being told, well, it's that person there who has, all of the stuff who's going to take from you, when that person there is in the exact same position that
maybe worse, and may be worse, right? That's how it's
definitely worse.
Right. Maybe worse because they didn't ask for this. They walked in the door. That's usually how it works. It's a very age-old method of divide and conquer. It's very old. It's a very old game. Right. All right. Blame the Mexicans. No, they didn't do anything. Blame the Indians. No, they didn't do anything. They blame this group. Blame that group. No, none of these people have done anything wrong. Well, their only crime is they want to provide for their own families. That's it. That is the
survival.
That's literally it, right? Honestly, you want to look at the problems in Mexico. The problems in Mexico come from the fact that Americans spent a ton of money down there, and it just valued their currency up to the point where the people there can't afford to live there. So, and that caused a problem. So what do? They come here. Why? Because that's the only place they can get anything that resembles a currency that can actually thrive down there. And as such, it creates, and they're not getting the good jobs. They're getting the crap jobs because they're getting the jobs that nobody else wants to do. And the big companies get a discount for it because nobody wants to do those jobs and they shouldn't be there. And you're lucky to be there and you're lucky to have a job. It's one of the most preposterous games I've ever seen in my life. And it's just like, you gotta be shitting me. But people fall for it every time. You're taking from me. No, they're not. You're getting taken. There's a difference, right? But that's how it works, and it works this way up here too. I mean, there's people. Oh, yeah. It's a game, and like all games, there are rules, and you have to realize the game in front of you, and once you realize it, then you can do whatever you need to do to change it. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, which is why I'm going to go ahead and go with one of my favorite quotes, which is, the only way to win is not to play.
Yes.
Yes, board games. And I think that actually, as an artist, as a creator, I really believe that, if basically we're on the theoretically the quote losing end of it, why not go ahead and build ourselves up, build each other up, and just be part of a artist supporting artists.
Yes.
So, let that piece of humanity. Creation is that spark.
Let us work together for honestly. Yes. The secret is there is no competition. There really isn't. But, yes. But not everybody. Exactly. Yeah. So. I think. So how is that? So I think you did a really good job with the interview, all things considered. How do you feel you did?
I don't think I actually got through my books talking about my work, but yeah, no, actually, I think we had a really good discussion. I appreciate being able to talk to you and feeling like, getting to be open about, just, I guess, science fiction writer to science fiction writer. We're sitting here looking at the social issues, and, that's kind of what we do, is we get into discussions of the what ifs,
absolutely,
and the hows, and the whys, and the what. Actually, not the whys, the why nots. We are the. I love science fiction because science fiction is what if and why not put together.
Yes.
And that, I think, is so wonderful. It's that, and fantasy is fun. I love doing a wonderful romp. Somebody that I'm going to be working with very soon is putting together a fantasy novel that, and even in looking at the rough draft, had me in stitches. So I'm looking forward to working with that author. And then, there's another author who is coming up with a wonderful new, actually two, one kind of a science fiction fantasy, very, very techno fantasy. And then the other one is a science fiction, and I am so, I love being part of the genre. Of course, I also love, being part of creation in any genre. I think it's absolutely wonderful when people, and then say, I want to put this in the world. And personally, being an editor, I love the idea of midwifing and being part of indie imprint, midwifing somebody's work all the way to publication so that they can put it out in the world and, and I guess learn to market from Adam Drees's book. I love that book.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It's wonderful.
No, he's a good dude. I really.
Oh gosh, he is. Yes, I've worked with him before.
Yeah. He's a friend of mine. So I know what he is capable of.
Oh yeah, no,
yeah.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, no, he's the person I point to and you go, if you're going to be an indie author, this is the guy. This is the guy.
Oh, he's definitely one of the best, and I think again he underestimates himself. But anyway, why don't we do that? Why don't we do this, since we've had this amazing discussion? Plug your current book, whether it's an edited book or one of yours, and how people can find you.
Okay, I have my first trilogy, which is a social science fiction trilogy, Sex, Tech, and Firearms, if you're interested. That is available on Smashwords and on Amazon. And in fact, if you go to indieimprint.com, you can find the Dome trilogy, but you can also find me on Amazon. Definitely find me on Twitter. I'm mouthing off on Twitter pretty regularly. And then there's the Cryptid series, which is paranormal science fiction with a little bit of romance, where what if cryptids, were real. And that's a response to, I kept reading these modern paranormal science fiction offerings, science fiction fantasy offerings, and the characters were like, gasp! You're a vampire, or you're a werewolf. Okay, and I'm like, wait a minute. If I came up across a vampire or a werewolf, I'd be like, I want to see your DNA. I want to see, how do you function? The mythology. How much of it is true? How much of it is false? How much did you put in between you and the world? So that's the angle that I'm coming from with the Cryptid series. So I've got an investigative team of a psychic medium and a psychologist and a biologist, and the three of them, are going through their own problems on top of trying to deal with a world that just suddenly got woken up to the reality that things just got weird.
Okay.
So.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so right now the third and fourth books are drafted. I've actually seen a couple of reviews asking about when's the next book coming out. They're drafted. I just need to do the redraft and the editing and the polishing and all that. And that means I need to have time to do that. But yeah, no, I'm. It's gonna happen. It's just taking some time.
No problem. All right. And that was my conversation with Jess Alter. Definitely check out her books. It was a lot of fun, and like I said, this week there will be a contest for Man and Brother. It was a lot of fun, Jess. Like I said, feel free to come back anytime you'd like. Beyond all that, yeah, I can't really say that this month has been a bad month. This has been very, very cool. Like a couple little things coming up. Next week, July 4th, I will be at the IFWA meeting at the Century Box talking about crowdfunding. Everybody's welcome to come listen to me if they can. I know it's IFWA permission, of course. Definitely check them out. IFWA meets every first Thursday of every month. It's a great science fiction group to get into in the city of Calgary, so if you want to do that, go for it. Beyond that, yeah, I'm working on my novel this weekend. That's my 3-day weekend. I'm working on getting that in so my editor doesn't beat me. But beyond all that, yeah, things are going great. I really am very happy where I'm seeing things going. I also want to make a quick shout out here to Marnie Young, the audio sorceress. I'm going to give you one more cool little bonus podcast just for you this weekend. It's kind of like a farewell. But Marnie, thank you for featuring me on audiosorceress.com, and we'll be talking in the future. I've been being very grateful and gratitude. That's been my theme for the last little bit. Lots of people have gone out of their way to help me, and I appreciate each and every one of them. Thank you. It really means a lot. And that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. So if you want to support the podcast, you can do so in a number of different ways. First off, you can vote for it for the Aurora Awards. Once again, I'm a finalist for the Aurora Awards for Best Fan-Related Work. Just Joshing has approached 270 episodes. I've been interviewing creators, so if you want to vote for me, that'd be great. Look up the pre-awards awards. Vote me up there. You can subscribe to the podcast. I am on Podomatic, Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. You should definitely listen to me, subscribe, leave a review. Even if you hate the podcast, that's cool. Just leave something. Everything's better than nothing. Beyond that, I have a YouTube channel, Joshua Penteloresco. There's 199 episodes right now you can listen to in my archive. I just had some really good interviews with Alan Detlow. I just put up Conor McCreary's interview there. There's some really good stuff there. My books, The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, Courtesy of MirrorWorldPublishing.com. Check them out. Beyond all that, stay inspired out there, guys. I'll be talking to you next month. Have a good Canada or United States Day next week.
Josh.